Amazon is expanding its brick-and-mortar presence in the Mile High City.
Amazon.
When Amazon rolled into town in the early 2000s, everyone, and I mean everyone, said small bookstores were toast, dead, finished, a relic. But 2,863 bookstores across America said, not today. They didn't just survive Amazon, they grew by 70% in 5 years. You want to beat a giant like Amazon? You gotta do something no one else will dare to try. And these owners, they did exactly that. Here's what Amazon didn't see coming. These bookstores didn't win by selling more books. They changed what a bookstore could be. And that's something you can't get from a website. Let's rewind. In the 2000s, when Amazon was just getting started, America had thousands of indie bookstores. But then, Amazon happened. By 2014, hundreds of bookstores had closed. Borders, the big chain, went bankrupt. Barnes & Noble was barely hanging on. And when the pandemic hit in 2020, at least 20% of indie bookstores were at risk of closing forever. For most business owners, that's the end of the story. But not for these folks. Because while everyone else was panicking, they were scheming. See, in April 2025, Amazon tried something sneaky. They ran a massive book sale, the same week as Independent Bookstore Day. It was clearly meant to crush the competition. But here's what happened instead. 1,600 bookstores threw a party, and people showed up. At Women and Children First in Chicago, it was their biggest sales day in 46 years. In the first hour, they made $3,000. At Anderson's Bookshop in Illinois, sales were up 261% over the year before. Oh, and by the way, Barnes & Noble had just opened a store 800 feet away, 3 days earlier. Didn't matter. And at Moon Palace Books in Minneapolis, sales jumped 50%. When they asked customers why they came, one person said, "I'm pissed off about Amazon's sale. I'm shopping at independent stores because Amazon is such a bully." That is what we're talking about. And it wasn't just small stores. At Powell's Books in Portland, the world's largest independent bookstore, they faced their own existential threat during the pandemic. Revenue dropped, staff had to be laid off. They asked the community for help. And you know what happened? People showed up. They bought gift cards, they ordered online. They organized neighborhood campaigns to support Powell's. Within months, the store stabilized. Today, Powell's City of Books still occupies an entire city block in downtown Portland. 1 million books, 68,000 square feet, 9 color-coded rooms. It survived because the community decided it was worth saving. Same thing happened at the Strand in New York. 93 years old, 18 miles of books. And in October 2020, owner Nancy Bass-Wyden posted a letter saying, "We need help. Revenue is down 70%. We might not survive." Within 48 hours, 25,000 orders came flooding in. People from all over the world bought books, gift cards, tote bags, anything. The Strand raised enough to stay open. And here's the wild part. Most of those orders came from people who'd never even been to New York. They just knew the Strand mattered. They knew losing it would mean losing something irreplaceable. So they fought for it. That's the power these stores have. So what did these bookstores do? How do you go from might close forever in 2020 to 70% growth and 323 new stores opening in 2024 alone? Simple. They stopped trying to beat Amazon at Amazon's game, and they started playing a completely different game. Researchers at Harvard studied this. They found indie bookstores that survived all did 3 things. First, community. These stores didn't just sell to their towns, they became their towns. At the Raven Bookstore in Kansas, owner Danny Kame put it this way: "You can't buy community." They championed Kansas authors, local stories, local voices, and people loved that. Second, curation. Amazon has algorithms. These stores have humans, people who actually read the books, who know your taste, who remember you loved that mystery last month and say, "Oh, you have to try this one next." You can't get that from a "customers who bought this also bought" list. Third, convening. These stores became what sociologists call third places. Not your home, not your job. A place where your community lives. Third Place Books in Seattle hosts over 1,000 events a year. Jazz concerts, game nights, knitting clubs, tai chi, school plays. Amazon can ship you a book in 2 days, but Amazon can't ship you belonging. And here's the really smart part. During the pandemic, when stores had to close their doors, they went online, but not alone. Bookshop.org, a platform built to help indies compete, stepped in. It's basically online bookselling, but 30% of every sale goes to the bookstore you choose. In 2024 alone, Bookshop sent $7 million to indie bookstores. At The Raven, before the pandemic, 1% of their sales were online. By mid-pandemic, 30%. Danny said, "That shipping is why we're still here." They didn't just survive. They expanded. 2,000 square feet of new space, 3 new employees, a whole shipping operation. And in 2022, Publishers Weekly named them Bookstore of the Year. But it wasn't just about going online. Some stores got wildly creative. Book People in Austin started offering book reader boxes, curated mystery boxes based on your taste. You'd fill out a quiz, and they'd handpick books just for you. It was like having a personal bookseller in a box. Others partnered with local cafes to deliver books with coffee orders. Some hosted virtual author events that people could watch from anywhere in the world. And then those recordings stayed online, getting thousands of views weeks later. One store in Missouri started distributing banned books for free to parents and students. 400 books a month. Because if a bookstore can't defend the right to read, who can? And then there's BookTok. Yes, TikTok. It sounds ridiculous, but independent bookstores started using TikTok to figure out what people wanted to read. One owner told me she'd see a book trending on BookTok, stock it immediately, and sell out in days. Customers would literally walk in and say, "I saw this on TikTok. Do you have it?" Some stores built entire displays around BookTok trends: romance, dark academia, fantasy, and it worked. Because BookTok readers don't just buy one book, they buy the whole series. They buy the author's backlist. They become obsessed. And when they found out they could support local bookstores instead of Amazon, they chose local every single time. So where are we now? As of 2025, there are 3,281 indie bookstore locations across America. That's 70% growth since 2020. In Texas alone, indie bookstores went from 11 stores in 2018 to 79 in 2023. That's a 618% increase in just 5 years. A case study in how the right community moves can exponentially grow a sector. And here's a wild stat. Romance bookstores, stores that only sell romance novels, went from 8 stores globally in 2022 to 89 in 2025. That's an 838% increase. These stores are packed. People come in multiple times a week because they're not just buying books, they're finding their people. And here's more proof this is real. The American Booksellers Association, the trade group for indie stores, saw its membership double in 5 years. Double. That means hundreds of new store owners looked at Amazon, looked at the competition, and said, "You know what? I'm opening a bookstore anyway." In 2024 alone, 323 new indie bookstores opened. That's almost 1 per day. That's not survival. That's a movement. Meanwhile, Barnes & Noble, the big chain everyone thought would dominate, is struggling to find its identity. They're closing stores, redesigning others, trying to figure out what they even are anymore. But indies? They know exactly what they are. They're community hubs, curators, third places. And that clarity is why they're winning. Because when you know who you are, you can't be replaced. And that brings us back to April 26th, 2025. Amazon ran a sale. They had prime shipping, lower prices, the whole deal. And people still chose to drive to their local bookstore, stand in line, pay full price, carry their books home. Because it wasn't about the books, it was about the choice. Here's the thing. This story, it's not really about bookstores. It's about what happens when people decide that community matters more than convenience. When they choose the owner who knows their name over the algorithm that knows their purchase history. And here's why that matters. When you buy from an indie bookstore, 29% of that money stays in your community. When you buy from Amazon, 5.8%. That's a 405% bigger impact on your town. More jobs, better schools, thriving main streets. And it's not just about money. When you shop at an indie bookstore, you're voting for the kind of world you want to live in. You're saying, I want a place where my kids can go to story time, where I can meet neighbors, where someone remembers my name and asks how that last book went. You're saying, I don't want every town to look the same. I don't want every store to feel like a warehouse. Amazon will always be faster, always cheaper, but it will never know you. It will never host your book club. It will never donate to your kid's school fundraiser. It will never close early because the owner went to a funeral for a regular customer. Those things, you can't automate them. You can't scale them. You can only build them, one conversation at a time. So if you're sitting there thinking, okay, I'm in. How do I support these stores? Here's the easiest way. Bookshop.org lets you buy books online, and 30% of every sale goes to the indie store you choose. We've built a storefront there with books that match these stories. Underdog wins, local business playbooks, all of it. Links in the description. Every book you grab funds the next story like this. Danny Kane at the Raven Bookstore says his strategy is simple. Pro-bookstore, not anti-Amazon. It's not about beating the giant. It's about building something the giant can't. And this is just the beginning. Across America, owners are figuring out that care beats scale. That people beat algorithms. If you want to see how small beats big, hit subscribe. Because these stories, they're everywhere. You just gotta know where to look. More owners, more towns. More proof that small still wins. See you next time.